He entered the market as a simple farmer and left ignored, humiliated. But the next day he returned, and his arrival changed everything. No one imagined that this man, treated with contempt, was actually the new owner of the establishment. Now he has an unforgettable lesson to teach. The sun was setting on the horizon of Green Ridge, painting the sky with orange hues that reflected on the vast plantations surrounding the small inland town. On the main street, Central Market kept its doors open, as it had for more than 3 decades. The establishment, the largest store in the region, was owned by Richard Mendoza, a man who measured people's worth by the shine of their shoes and the model of their cars. On that particularly stuffy October afternoon, Joe Anthony crossed the threshold of the market. His muddy boots left small marks on the freshly waxed floor, provoking disapproving glances from the employees. The man of about 50 wore a faded plaid shirt and jeans that had long since lost their original color. On his sun-weathered face, keen green eyes stood out, though few bothered to notice them. "Another hick trying to look like somebody," whispered Mary, the cashier, to her colleague in the deli section. The comment provoked discreet giggles among the employees, who exchanged looks of superiority. Joe headed to the dairy section, where a young attendant named Claire watched him with visible discomfort. As he approached the counter, the girl instinctively took a step back, as if fearing that simplicity might be contagious. "Good afternoon, miss. Could you show me that special cheese I saw in last week's ad?" asked Joe, his calm and polite voice contrasting with the veiled hostility surrounding him. Claire exchanged glances with Mary before responding. "I'm sorry, sir, but that cheese is a premium product. I'm sure we have other options more suitable for your profile." The malicious comment provoked more muffled laughter throughout the market aisles. Joe maintained his dignity, although his eyes betrayed a mixture of sadness and disappointment. It wasn't the first time he had faced this kind of treatment, but something on that particular day touched deep in his heart. Richard Mendoza, who was observing the scene from his office on the mezzanine, came down the stairs with heavy steps. His Italian suit and designer shoes echoed his supposed superiority. He approached Joe with an artificial smile on his lips. "Can I help you with something, my good man?" he asked, loading each word with irony. "Perhaps you're looking for Joe's corner store in the outskirts. The prices there are more popular." Joe took a deep breath, maintaining the composure that had always been his trademark. He took a $100 bill from his wallet, slightly yellowed by time. "No, thank you. I'd just like to pay for these items," he replied, placing a small basket with basic goods on the counter. Mary, the cashier, examined the bill with exaggerated care. "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't accept this. This bill is too old. It might be counterfeit." It was the last straw. Joe silently collected his goods, returning them to the shelves one by one, while feeling all eyes on him. As he left the market, he showed no anger or resentment, just a calmness that unsettled those who expected to see him humiliated. What no one knew, as they watched his simple figure disappear down the dusty street, was that Joe Anthony carried with him not only the wounded dignity of that afternoon, but also a secret that would forever change the fate of everyone in that establishment. On his farm, a few miles away, documents kept in an old safe told a very different story from what his appearance suggested. Joe was the owner of one of the largest agricultural cooperatives in the region, although he preferred to maintain a discreet and simple life. His businesses, managed with wisdom and discretion, generated a fortune that few could imagine. And that night, sitting on the porch of his century-old house, Joe observed the stars while a plan took shape in his mind. It wouldn't be revenge. He was above that. It would be a lesson, the kind that money can't buy, but that money, ironically, would help teach. He picked up the phone and made 2 calls. The first to Dr. Paul Rivera, his trusted lawyer for over 20 years. The second to Edward Sanders, a well-known real estate broker who had been trying for months to convince him to diversify his investments. "Dr. Paul, yes, I need your services early tomorrow." "No, it's not about the northern lands. It's about a new acquisition I intend to make here in town, something that will surprise a lot of people." As he hung up the phone, a serene smile illuminated his time-weathered face. People usually see only what they want to see, Joe thought. Tomorrow they would learn to see beyond appearances. In town, the lights of Central Market were beginning to go out. Richard? Mendoza was closing his register, satisfied with another day of profits and his supposed superiority. Little did he know that his kingdom of arrogance was about to meet a new owner, one who had much more to teach than just business lessons. Night fell over Green Ridge, bringing with it the promise that the following day would not be like the others. And while the town slept, Joe Anthony prepared to show that a man's true wealth is not in the clothes he wears or the car he drives, but in the character he carries with him, even when no one is looking. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give it a like. Tell us which city you're watching us from. We'll continue. The next morning dawned with a soft mist covering the fields of Green Ridge. Joe Anthony was already up before the first crow of the rooster, as was his custom. He dressed with the same care as always, simple jeans, plaid shirt, and his inseparable boots. In the mirror, he adjusted the time-worn hat, an inheritance from his father, as was the wisdom that appearances don't always reveal the truth. At 9 o'clock sharp, a discreet car parked in front of the farmhouse. Out stepped Dr. Paul Rivera, with his leather briefcase full of documents, and Edward Sanders, the broker who could barely contain his excitement at the prospect of the deal he was about to broker. "The papers are all in order, Joe," announced Dr. Paul, spreading documents over the solid wood table on the porch. "The offer we prepared is irresistible, considering the current financial situation of Central Market." Edward added, "Richard Mendoza has no idea, but his establishment is much more indebted than it appears. All that luxury is just a facade." Joe listened attentively while drinking his coffee, served in a simple enamel mug. His keen green eyes examined every detail of the contracts presented. He wasn't a man of hasty decisions. Every step of his plan had been carefully calculated. "Are you sure you want to do this, Joe?" asked Dr. Paul, knowing his client's character well. "There are other establishments for sale in the region, some even in better financial shape." Joe placed the cup on the saucer gently. "Doctor, throughout my life, I've learned that money should serve a greater purpose than simply accumulating wealth. My father taught me that when he left me not just these lands as inheritance, but primarily his values." The lawyer nodded, understanding that there was much more to this transaction than just business. Joe was known for his discreet generosity. How many students had managed to complete their studies thanks to anonymous scholarships? How many families had received help in difficult times, never knowing the source of the aid? At 10 o'clock, the trio headed to the market. The movement was still small, with only a few regular customers doing their morning shopping. Mary, the cashier who had humiliated Joe the day before, widened her eyes as she saw him enter again, this time accompanied. Richard Mendoza was in his office when his secretary interrupted him, announcing the presence of visitors. He came down the stairs adjusting his Italian tie, but his smug smile froze when he recognized the hick from the day before. "Good morning, Mr. Mendoza," greeted Joe, with the same politeness as always. "I believe you already know Edward Sanders, our local real estate broker." The owner's face paled slightly. He knew Edward, of course, and knew that his presence usually meant important business. But what would this simple man have to do with it? "We've brought a proposal that might interest you," continued Joe, while Dr. Paul removed the documents from his briefcase. "I'd like to buy your establishment." The announcement provoked a sudden silence in the market. The employees, who were trying to disguise their curiosity by continuing their tasks, stopped what they were doing. Claire, the deli attendant, dropped an empty tray, the metallic noise echoing through the tense environment. Richard forced a laugh. "Buy my market? Sorry, but I think there's been some mistake. This establishment is not for sale, and even if it were—" "15 million, interrupted Edward, placing a folder with the official proposal on the counter. "In cash, no need for financing or installments." Richard's arrogant smile faltered. That amount was more than double the real value of the market, especially considering the hidden debts that were accumulating. But how? How could this man of such simple appearance? "Perhaps you'd prefer to talk in your office," suggested Dr. Paul, noticing the growing interest of customers and employees in the scene unfolding. In the minutes that followed, Richard's office became the stage for one of the biggest turnarounds Green Ridge had ever witnessed. While the documents were being analyzed and discussed, downstairs speculations ran wild. Who was this man really? Where did so much money come from? Mary, regretting her behavior from the day before, couldn't avoid the tears that welled up in her eyes. Claire alternated between shock and shame, recalling her prejudiced words about the premium cheese. After almost 2 hours of meeting, the office doors opened. Richard Mendoza came down the stairs like a defeated man, his arrogance completely dissipated. Joe followed him with the same serenity as always, the transfer papers already signed in his hands. But what no one expected was what would come next. Joe gathered all the employees in the center of the market, including those who had treated him with disdain. His speech was brief but impactful. "From today on, this establishment has a new purpose. No one will be judged by their appearance when crossing these doors. All of you will keep your jobs, but with one condition. You will learn to treat every customer, regardless of their origin or social status, with the same respect you would like to receive." The silence that followed was deafening. At that moment, everyone began to understand the true dimension of what was happening. It wasn't just a transfer of ownership. It was a life lesson that would echo for generations. As Joe walked among the shelves of his new establishment, greeting each employee by name, many wondered how they had been so blind. How had they not noticed the greatness of this man who hid under simple clothes and humble manners? But the story was far from over. What no one knew was that Joe's plans for Central Market went far beyond a simple change of ownership. His ideas for transformation were just beginning to take shape, and Green Ridge was about to witness how a man truly rich in values could change not just an establishment, but an entire community. The first weeks under the new administration of Central Market brought changes that no one in Green Ridge could have predicted. Joe Anthony, still wearing his simple clothes and his usual boots, transformed the establishment not just into a place for shopping, but into a true community center. Right in the first meeting with the employees, Joe surprised everyone by presenting his vision. "This market will be a reflection of the field I love so much. In agriculture, we learn that every seed needs time and care to flourish. Here it will be no different. Each customer, each employee, each product will have its value recognized." Mary, the former cashier who had treated him with such disdain, was called to the office on a Monday morning. Trembling, she expected to receive her dismissal letter. Instead, Joe invited her to lead a new project, a special service program for the elderly and people with special needs. "But why me?" asked Mary, confused. "After the way I treated you?" Joe smiled, his green eyes shining with wisdom. "Because I saw something in you that perhaps you haven't even noticed yet. Behind that arrogance, there's someone who knows each customer by name, someone who, even without admitting it, has already helped many elderly people carry their groceries to the car." Tears ran down Mary's face as Joe continued, "Sometimes we just need an opportunity to show the best of ourselves." Claire, from the deli section, also experienced her own transformation. Joe assigned her to create a special section of local products, working directly with small producers in the region. "That premium cheese you didn't want to show me?" Joe commented with a gentle smile. "Now we'll have 10 different types, all produced by families from around here." The physical changes in the market began to appear gradually. The shelves were reorganized to be more accessible. A rest area with comfortable chairs was installed, where customers could have free coffee. But the biggest transformation was happening in people. Mrs. Francis, a lady who previously avoided the market because she felt intimidated, was now a constant presence. "Hey, it's the first time in years that I feel truly welcome somewhere," she commented, while Mary patiently helped her choose products. The employees began to notice something curious. Joe seemed to know the life story of every person who entered the market. When Mr. Jack, a retired farmer, came to shop, Joe greeted him like an old friend and asked about his tomato plantation. "How did you know about my tomatoes?" asked Mr. Jack, surprised. "Oh, let's say I've been walking these lands longer than they imagine," Joe replied with an enigmatic smile. One day during the monthly inventory, Claire discovered something intriguing in the market's old records. Several families in the region, who had gone through financial difficulties in recent years, had their debts mysteriously paid off. The dates coincided with periods when Joe's agricultural cooperative, which few knew was his, had made large purchases at the establishment. Stories about the new owner of the market began to spread through the town. Some said he was an eccentric millionaire. Others swore he was an angel sent to teach a lesson. But Joe remained the same, arriving early every morning, greeting everyone with his simple manner. On a particularly busy afternoon, a group of executives from a supermarket chain in the capital arrived at the establishment. They offered Joe a considerable amount to transform Central Market into a branch of their network. "We would have imported products, cutting-edge technology, a more sophisticated look," argued one of the executives, looking disdainfully at the wooden shelves and local products. Joe received them with his usual politeness, offering them the house coffee and cheese bread made by Mrs. Maria, one of the new local suppliers. After patiently listening to the entire proposal, his response was simple. "Gentlemen, you offered me a price for the market, but you didn't realize that the true value of this place is not on the shelves or in the products. It's in the stories that each person carries when entering through that door. It's in the sincere smile of those who feel welcomed. That has no price." The executives left disconcerted, while the customers who witnessed the scene spontaneously applauded. At that moment, even the most skeptical understood that Central Market had become much more than just a business. At the end of that week, Joe gathered all the employees for a special announcement. The market had recorded the best month of sales in its history, surpassing all expectations. But that wasn't what he wanted to celebrate. "Today I received the best news a merchant can have," he said, his eyes misty with emotion. "Mrs. Zoe, that lady who lives on the outskirts and was always mistreated in the town's shops, told me that here she feels at home. This, my friends, is the true profit we seek." As the meeting was ending, Mary pulled Claire aside and whispered, "Did you notice? There's something more happening here. Joe, he seems to know everything about everyone, as if..." Before she could complete her thought, they were interrupted by a commotion at the market entrance. A group of people was gathering around someone who had just arrived. It was just the beginning of a revelation that no one in Green Ridge was prepared to witness. The clock on the church tower struck 8 o'clock in the evening when Joe gathered all the employees in the center of the market. The soft lights created a welcoming atmosphere, while the aroma of freshly brewed coffee by Mrs. Cecilia filled the air. The expectant faces reflected the curiosity for the last promised announcement. "Before revealing the next steps," Joe began, "I need to tell you about a promise I made a long time ago." He paused, his eyes scanning each face present. "When I was a boy helping my father on the farm, I promised that if I ever succeeded, I would never forget my roots and would always help those in need." Mary, who now coordinated the special care program, noticed that Joe was holding a large brown envelope. Claire, responsible for the local products section, noticed that Mr. Jack was smiling with misty eyes, as if he already knew what was coming. "Central Market," Joe continued, "has always been more than just a commercial establishment. It was a place where people met, where stories were shared, where no one was judged by appearance or social status. Today I want to ensure that this spirit stays alive forever." He opened the envelope and pulled out a set of documents. "Starting tomorrow, Central Market will transform into a cooperative. Each of you, employees, and each of our small producer partners will become a partner in the establishment." An astonished silence fell over the room, followed by murmurs of surprise and disbelief. John continued, "Each person will have a share in the profits and a voice in decisions. But more importantly, each of you will be guardians of the values that make this place so special." Tears streamed down Mary's face as she remembered with shame how she had treated John on his first visit. Claire hugged Mrs. Thompson, both emotional at the news. The other employees exchanged glances, still processing the meaning of this revelation. "But there's more," said John, pulling another document from the envelope. "We're going to create the Green Valley Foundation, which will be maintained with part of the market's profits. Its goal will be to support educational and cultural projects in the region, as well as provide microcredit for small entrepreneurs. Mr. Anderson stood up, his voice choked with emotion. John is doing more than giving the market back its soul. He's creating a legacy that will transform generations. John smiled, his green eyes shining with the same humility as always. It's not me who's doing this. It's all of us. Each person who walks through that door carries a story, a dream, a hope. Our mission is to welcome each of them with the same respect and dignity. At that moment, as if by a twist of fate, Richard Miller, the former owner, entered the market. He had heard rumors about the changes and had come to see for himself. Seeing the meeting, he tried to discreetly retreat, but John called out to him, "Please, Richard, join us. Your experience will be valuable for the cooperative if you want to be part of it." The former owner, visibly moved by the unexpected invitation, accepted a coffee offered by Mrs. Thompson. There, among those people he once judged inferior, he began to understand the true meaning of wealth. The following hours were dedicated to explaining the details of the new management model. Each employee received a copy of the cooperative's bylaws, and John made sure to clarify all doubts. The enthusiasm was contagious, with everyone sharing ideas and suggestions for the future of the establishment. When the clock struck midnight, John proposed a toast with coffee, his favorite drink. "To our Central Market family," he said, raising his enamel mug. "May we always remember that a person's true value isn't in what they own, but in the good they do for others." The next morning, the news spread quickly through Green Valley. The market opened its doors not just as a renewed commercial establishment, but as a symbol of social transformation. People came from all parts, curious to learn the story of the humble farmer who had changed not just a business but an entire community. John continued to wear his simple clothes and his usual boots. He arrived early every morning, talked to. Each employee and customer knew every story. The only difference now was that when someone new entered the market and mistook him for just any employee, everyone smiled, knowing that this simple man had taught them all the most valuable lesson. True wealth isn't in what we wear or own, but in the values we carry and the good we do for others. Dear listeners, we hope that John's story and that of Central Market has touched your hearts. To continue this journey of stories that make us reflect on the true values of life, we've prepared a special playlist with equally inspiring narratives. Find it by clicking on the link to the left of the video. If this story moved you as much as it moved us, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave your like. Every day we bring unique stories that remind us of what really matters in life. Share in the comments your own experiences about judging people by appearances. Your story might inspire others to change how they see the world. See you in the next video.